on your phone screen, you're like, what is that? Oh, it's my screen. So I bought these Hot Pockets, and my mother, who was with me, put them all in the freezer, but she took them out of the box, so there's no instruction.
First one on deck is a question about BIPs and your favorite charter schools. Okay. Someone wrote in and asked, can a BIP at a charter school state that a student is still required to follow all the classroom rules and school policy?
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be in the BIP. There's a section under 504 or IEP where we note that the student may have behavioral needs. They might have behavioral needs that are served under accommodations, under services.
Used to record in IEP meetings.
You scared me for a second. Thanks, you guys, for the gifts. So I have a laptop here, which you can get 2 HP laptops on HSN the week of Cyber Monday before Christmas. Just FYI, 2 for $3.99. So I have a laptop that I work on, which holds an Ethernet cord. I have another full laptop right here, which is connected to my printer. And so on my second laptop, I'm recording on otter.ai, OTTER.ai. I'm not an affiliate, but they are ridiculously amazing. I think for the most expensive membership, it's $20 a month. I record everything. Why? Because I sit in meetings. Thanks, you guys. I sit in meetings and, you know, humans only retain 7% of what they hear. That's just a static. It's a statistic. I haven't had enough coffee today. And so even if you're fully prepared, you're only going to retain 7%. So I'm recording for my own information. I will scroll back in the transcript of Otter while we're talking and say, actually, you did just say that we don't even know if ADA is a consideration for Billy Smith because he's so disabled. So I like to read back what they said in the meeting. And then I've captured what happened in the meeting. There are about 6 or 7 states that are 2 disclosure states. And you would have to get consent from the entire IEP team to record in those states. I've never had that happen. I don't even ask. And then there are some states you want to check with state statutes that they have specificity around how early you need to notify them that you're going to be recording. But people ask me if I'm recording. Karen, are you recording? I said, yes, I've got a chip in my head. I used to have one on my shoulder, but I got rid of that.
All right. What's the law in regards to special education homeschoolers who want a post-high school option? Is transition planning like that required for students on a non-public service plan versus an IEP?
So there's no laws around, there's no special education laws for homeschool, right? So you've either chosen to educate your child at home, which is your right. You've chosen to educate them in a private school that's not federally funded for special education. You might have them in a charter school or public school, which both receive federal funds. But homeschool, I would reach out to your co-op in your area, reach out to your state education agency. They would have information about that.
Excellent. Okay. What does the law say about an IEP that has co-taught listed, but the co-taught model was not used and service hours are not being provided?
It's called failure to implement. And so I use that language, whether it's a state complaint, a due process complaint, or a federal complaint with the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. You have a requirement to implement the plan, whether it's a 504 plan or an individualized education program. So that is failure to implement.
All right. Here's a good one. This year, my 2nd grade son, who was put in one gen ed classroom of 3 kids, but with all or at least several of them considered to be, quote, problem children. Is there anything that I can do?
Well, I've never heard of a gen ed class with 3 kids. I think children are just children. I think that they have needs that we have to address emotionally, behaviorally, academically, communicative, functionally, all sorts of things. Kids aren't a problem. Sometimes the way we deliver their education is not successful. And sometimes the education that they need is out of the bounds of public school, which is why sometimes we ask for out-of-district placement at the expense of the district. And somebody, I'm just gonna jump in. So, dear Catherine, how do you feel about taking recess as a punishment for a child with autism? I don't know what teacher would take away recess from children. They need to move. But we don't punish children by taking away recess. I would light them up like Christmas Eve if they did that. There's a requirement for physical activity. It's usually about 135 minutes for every school, but I would ask them for that policy where you can take away recess as a punishment for kids.
Absolutely. All right. Is there a ratio considered for kids with IEPs or disabilities when defining a general education classroom?
There's not. I mean, we use a word in the law called reasonable, which is not a word that many people understand. I think most special educators and most special education teachers and paraprofessionals, caseloads are too heavy. We would hope that the special educator or the related service provider or the instructional service provider can deliver that special education with fidelity with the caseload they have.
All right. Is the school district's attorney allowed to communicate directly to a parent who is there without an attorney?
Oh, I'd love to answer that question, but I don't want to be accused of UPL, unlawful practice of law. So a litigator, as I understand it, and I'm certainly not one, is there to give recommendations and counsel to their client. You are not their client. Your advocate is not their client. Your mother-in-law is not their client. So, I sit in lots of meetings. My advocates sit in lots of meetings where schools feel the need to bring in an attorney, and that doesn't bother me. But the attorney, just like the advocate, we are not consensus members. I always say I'm a committee of no one. And so my job is to help frame the information as much as possible so that my client, the parent, can make the most informed decision. But certainly if I'm in a meeting and the attorney's running the meeting, I will just stop the meeting and we'll reschedule till we can have a state facilitator there.
Excellent. What can a school do when a student is physically aggressive towards teachers? She said that she may unalive herself or a staff member, and she's continuing to go to school. She has an average IQ, is autistic, along with multiple other disabilities that aren't confirmed due to mom and therapist.
Right. So, I mean, if, the school, just like the parent, can call an IEP meeting at any time. So certainly I would call an IEP meeting. We need to look at the student's program and progress. At that IEP meeting, I would immediately ask for a new FBA, a functional behavior assessment. And I also would look at, is her placement in this school appropriate for her? And so the word appropriate covers a myriad of things, right? If you're not safe, nobody's learning. If she's not safe, if the school members or the other children aren't safe, then that's a non-issue. So there are times when a child is so emotionally dysregulated, they have homicidal or suicidal ideation. We should act on that. We should never have crises in schools and tragedies and losses because we didn't act. You got to get out of, I'm worried of what other people think. If you're in this business, I don't care what other people think. I love people, but I'm here to serve children, and we need to act as quickly as possible, and we need to intervene as quickly as possible, whether it's emotional, communicative, academics, functional, or any need of the child once it presents.
All right, very good. Is there a limited number of aides allowed in a self-contained classroom student-to-teacher ratio?
Nope. I mean, I have settings where kiddos are what we call it high-impact settings. I know my friend Quinn would know about that, and sometimes the ratio is 2 adults to 1 student, and sometimes it's higher. So.
All right, so this is a little bit of a longer one. My son is a junior in high school, and in 6th grade, we found out he has a specific learning disability in all areas. Math has been one of the hardest. He freezes, he panics. I asked the school to test him for math dyscalculia. They haven't responded. What should I do?
So, a couple things about your statement or your question. So when you said he meets eligibility for specific learning disabilities in all areas, there's 9 specific learning disabilities. I'd be surprised if he met eligibility in all of those. As it relates to dyscalculia, I always say it's like the little cousin of the big one, right? So dyscalculia, dysgraphia is rarely served in schools. I don't see a lot of intervention for that. It does happen sometimes. But those, although that language sits inside of the federal code, the U.S. Department of Education Code of Federal Regulations, it on its own is not a federal eligibility. So dyscalculia, dysgraphia, kind of all the disses may not get your kiddo the bang for their buck that you need. I'm going to assume if your child has dyscalculia or dysgraphia that they probably have one of the larger predominant SLDs in those categories. But I would do this. I would ask for cognitive testing in all 7 Gs. The G's stand for gangster. No, they don't. They stand for brain skills. And then I would ask for formal achievement testing in the 3 standard ones, writing, reading, and math. Additionally, OE and LC, oral expression and listening comprehension. I had the most amazing, I think she was a psychologist in the great Georgia the other day. I asked for all 7 Gs in testing. She goes, Miss Cunningham, how about we'll do all 8? I was like, whew, I need a minute. I'm going to have to fan myself. I was like, did you just break up long-term into retrieval and storage? I was like, I love you. So we need to know what's going on with them cognitively and how their brain processes information, retains information, stores it, manipulates it, so that we can see where that deficit is so we can properly serve it.
All right, and here's one. My little girl has an IEP for autism and possible ADHD and a speech impairment. We have a meeting to discuss OT services. Do you have any advice?
I'm full of advice. To discuss OT services, so we discuss testing, but so we get OT services because they met eligibility. So for OT services, you're going to ask for formal testing in sensory and formal testing in fine motor. Those are the 2 OT that we're doing at school.
All right, and then your favorite words: emergency, substitute, teacher in a structured, self-contained classroom.
Yeah, it's like me having shredded abs. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. So I love you, but we're filing on everybody, every day, every week, all year long. And it's unfortunate that schools are choosing to do that. Additionally, somebody just asked, what are the 9 SLDs? They are foreign reading, dyslexia, because dyslexia can be served either general ed or special education based on the acuity of your dyslexia. It might be more appropriately served under special education. So dyslexia, basic reading, reading fluency, reading comprehension. Just as an aside, we all know Reading Rockets 1999, that reading fluency is the only bridge to comprehension, and it's the least noted thing. So make sure that when you're at an IEP meeting that you always get your child's WCPMs, words correct per minute, and make sure that that aligns with 90 years of oral reading fluency. You can find that document on eric.gov. Back to the SLDs: dyslexia, basic reading, reading fluency, reading comprehension, math calculations, math problem solving, written expression, oral expression, and listening comprehension.
Excellent. Okay, so as someone that said, I requested raw data collection sheets, and the teacher sent me a Word document with bold letters that said, evidence of goals, and then typed out a to-do list. Is that what you mean by raw data collection?
So we cannot, there's no language in a state code and the 504, Title II, ADA, or IDA about raw data collection sheets. So here's what you need to be able to ask for them. You need to go back, call a review IEP meeting, and under each of your IEP goals where it says method of evaluation, you need to have them add these 3 words: weekly data collection. Weekly data collection. Doesn't matter what all the other stuff is there. We can just leave that. It doesn't bother me. Because once it's in the IEP, once it's codified, that means it's legal, we agree on it, and the conformity of it, then they're on the hook for doing it. But because you don't have anything that indicates weekly data collection, it's going to be very hard for you to get data collection sheets. So raw data collection sheets are those, it's just a word that I use that we work on weekly, and then we put all of our little post-it notes together, and then we put them in a software. So go back and look at your IEP goals. Under the goal, there should be two things. Implementer, that's the person that is implementing the goal and or taking data. And then under that, method of evaluation, method of measurement, how we gonna know this is working? Maybe that's what it's gonna say. How we gonna know, right? You wanna put those three words, weekly data collection.
Excellent. I'm going to ask two more, and then I'm going to toss it over to Bonnie. Yes. All right. So, next question is, we asked about a device for our 7-year-old who is mostly nonverbal. School told us that we need to work on them understanding what the pictures mean, and then we can talk about whether or not they're ready for a device next year. Is there any way we can get it sooner?
No prerequisites for a student that needs AAC, alternative augmentative communication. So a person that uses sign language, that is AAC. It's alternative augmentative communication. So no prerequisite. So the Assistive Technology Act of 1998, you should print that out. Assistive Technology Act of 1998 ensures that persons in America are allowed to have assistive technology and assistive technology devices, and wait for it, assistive technology minutes. Yeah, minutes. So certainly we would like to have an evaluation in assistive technology and communication and assistive technology and written expression. So there's no prerequisite for it. What we don't do is wait. I think parents don't really understand the gravity of severe language impairments. There's not a lot of data that supports over time that they're just going to start talking in the normed and average range. So AAC bridges that, or VOCD, voice output communication device. We wait for nothing. We don't wait for an intervention. We don't wait for the kiddo to go, just kidding, I can talk. So I would say to the committee, we are requesting those two tests. Should you choose to deny those tests, please provide me that denial in a prior written notice.
All right, perfect. Then next question is, what do I do if my IEP states services are provided in ESE, but are being provided in the gen ed class?
So that's failure to implement. We don't get to judge, massage, tweak, adjust the IEP. The IEP is delivered and the conformity of it. We don't get to make adjustments. I was in an IEP meeting and they told me about the new schedule of services they started. You did. They sure did. We just sure did. Yeah, I said, we don't get to do that. Well, we're just trying some stuff. Yeah, we don't. Can you imagine if somebody did that with your kids' prescriptions? We're just trying some stuff. So if we need to change the IEP, we come back to the table as a committee. We decide where, if any, changes need to be made. But we have to deliver the IEP in the conformity that we agreed upon in the last IEP meeting.
All right, Miss Bonnie.
What if a student is eligible for OT services but doesn't qualify for academic services? Do you have to have academic goals in the IEP?
So we don't. So goals, which I hopefully you guys are going to be on Special Education Academy tonight. We're in a series called Every Page of the IEP, and tonight is goals. So goals are educational goals. Sometimes they're academic, sometimes they're functional, sometimes they're attention, sometimes they're behavior, sometimes they're sensory, and sometimes they're academic, right? So I have lots of kiddos that have autism, and they have, emotional regulation goals. They have attention to task goals. They have sustaining goals. They have completing goals, and they have OT for sensory and or fine motor. But there's no requirement for an academic goal. You couldn't have an IEP with just related services. OTs are related service. You would need other goals, whether they were functional, emotional, communicative, behavioral, that sort of thing.
Okay, and can you explain the evaluation procedure? My daughter is being evaluated and I've only been given an assessment plan. What happens next?
So I'm going to assume that you mean an evaluation procedure for special education. So if you've signed a notice and consent for special education and related services, depending on where you are in these great United States, it's somewhere between 30 and 60 days. At the maximum in the United States, it is 60 school days. So it's really important that when you're in that meeting, you sign notice and consent, you ask Bonnie, hey, can you give me the due date? And, you know, if you're in Oregon, they might tell you they're not able to. Did I say that? Sorry, I'm just kidding. Oregon. I said, so can we count 60 school days? Well, I would have to count it out. Oh, okay. So ask them when the due date is, because around that time, you're going to have a meeting to look at those evaluations. So just email whoever you signed consent with and say, where are we in the evaluation completion process? Now, listen, it might seem like a lot of time, 45 school days, 60 school days. We want them to do the evaluation with fidelity. We want them to take their time so they do it with care. Of all the things that you wanted to drive through, special ed testing ain't one of them. Yes, Kara, were you in my meeting in Oregon? Is it because you guys are so close to the water that it messes up your decision-making process? They really didn't care for me. Like, it wasn't like they didn't care for me a little bit. They were like this, which I'm like, is that Kit Kat? So it didn't bother me. There was one person there that was reasonable. Was called an attorney. And guess what happened? We got it done. There's just so much heart feelings when you ask for testing, like it's coming out of their paycheck. So, yes, Oregon. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. I love Seattle and that little mountain thing you got. I love it. Makes me nervous in Seattle, the parking. I feel like my car is just going to slide off. So, but I think now they probably have a little area in the school with like a little picture of me and like little dolls with pins, but that's okay. Right, Bonnie?
So is it true that special education students can't be on a half-day schedule if they're in a Title I school? A full schedule is very overwhelming and a half-day would be best for the student.
So I'm not sure about the specificity of that question. I have kiddos that are partial homebound and partial school. That is the route I would go. I would never agree to a reduction of a school day because then you've agreed to a reduction of the implementation of a free, appropriate public education. So for me, if you were my client, I would go partial homebound, partial school.
Okay, and what happens when the school and the parent do not agree on placement for the child?
And say that question again.
What happens when the school and the parent do not agree on placement for the child?
So that you're in a disagree IEP meeting, you capture your disagreements, you sign, and then you have to reconvene within 10 days, even if you're in Virginia or Georgia. So during that reconvene, the intention of that is that we can all take a breath, get a snack, and provide more additional data to the committee as we reconvene. Now remember, a parent only has 2 disagrees. If you disagree with the school twice, the state determines that the LEA, the local education agency, their recommendation goes. So should you choose to exercise one of your rights and file due process, you'll have to do that within 5 business days to keep a stay put in place for your student.
Okay, and what would you do if your child had an FIE done and they don't want to go over the results until the afternoon before the ARD meeting?
I would say, welcome to Louisiana. Did I say that, Quinn? I just feel like I'm all out of control because Alicia's not here. So we don't do that. So the law says 2 things under your procedural rights you should know about. 2 things. The parents have the right to IEP team membership, and the parents have right to meaningful participation in the IEP process. So how would that be equitable when everybody else at the school has an opportunity to see it? Or, I would just log into the meeting and say, since you denied me the ability to prepare as you did, we'll have to take a break. I'll turn my camera off and I'm going to read this evaluation. And then as soon as I'm done, I'll log back in about 45 minutes. Equal, it means equity, equity, equity. We don't bully parents. That's a mistake because then they reach out to me or one of my advocates. Don't do that. It's a problem.
And does a school district have to take the outside IEE results, or can they refuse them?
So you have to accept any data that's brought to the committee. We don't have to implement it. So if I brought in, a cocktail napkin from my friend's baby shower and I wrote on there, Billy struggles with reading, and I want them to talk about that, we do that. So the IEE, the Independent Education Evaluation, is an outside evaluation. So in a lot of ways, you're already at a disadvantage. You're saying, I disagree with you, and we want somebody else to overrule your decision. So it's a toss-up, right? So if you're going to go the IEE route, make sure that you get somebody that district, county, or city uses on a frequent basis for those results. And then I want to kind of go back. Somebody asked again to share about what happens if the parent disagrees with the school district. So if you disagree with the school district about placement, then you need to sign and disagree. You need to capture your disagree. What does that mean? Write it out. The biggest problem that I get when I prep clients or my team members prep clients is you didn't disagree in writing. Oh no, Karen, we disagreed for years. No, it's not in writing. And if it's not in writing, it never happened. The OCR won't think it happened, a mediator won't think it happened, state investigator won't think it happened, and a hearing officer won't think it happened. So write it down. So stop listening to people that say don't sign. I would sign and say I wasn't ready to sign, but sign your name and capture your position. So you have to be offered a 10-day reconvene. We don't just tell people no. And then in that 10-day reconvene, I recommend that you come back with additional data. For me, I'm going to try to Zoom with the school district prior to that to see if we can negotiate a different outcome than a complete disagreement.
Okay, and this next one says, my son elopes. What should be done at school to help with this?
Well, we should first try to figure out what is the function of that behavior. For every outcome, there is a reason. So eloping is an outcome. We have to first determine by a professional, either an LSSP, an LPC, a social worker, a district behavioral specialist, what do we believe is the function of that behavior? And then once we know that, then we can work around ways to mitigate it and look at ways to reduce his need for, escaping the setting.
Can a child have occupational therapy at school and outside of the school at the same time?
You can have occupational therapy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and your mother could have invented occupational therapy. Whether or not a student receives services out of the school is really nobody's business, right? The school has an onus, duty, and responsibility to deliver special education-related service for the student inside of the instructional day. So lots of times parents are like, well, we already have OT, so I won't have the school do it. Those are two different things. There's three different models, right? There's a medical model, a therapeutic model, and an educational model. They rarely play nice together. They each have different purposes, but private OT is not educational OT.
Okay, and this one's a little bit longer, but she is stating that I've been dealing with some crazy things this year. My kids are in high school now, and my boy's IEP had to pull my son from a class because the teacher wasn't safe for him. He was a bully to my son and to other kids. Now he sits in the library doing independent studies on his own for this class that he has to graduate. It's a health class, and there's only one teacher that is able to teach this class. What can she do?
So I'd run that up the flagpole. So I'm the first person to call the superintendent's secretary. I'm the first person to drive over there and walk in. Listen to me. Are you listening? Only squeaky wheels get good outcomes when you talk about special education. That's it. That is it. You don't get the IEP you deserve. You don't get the IEP based on law. You get the IEP that you negotiate. That's what we teach people every week in Special Education Academy. That's what we teach people in 2 days. That's what we teach people in Mastermind, is to how to negotiate those outcomes.
Getting much cooperation from the parents who hired an advocate. I was asked to, quote, hold the 15 days on the 15th day after the annual. Now it has been a week. We are at a hold still point, and I have asked for their input numerous times. I would love for a new plan and a
placate to some parents, that's not appropriate either. So you want to make sure that there are timelines in every school district, county, and city in the United States. So make sure that you've abided by those timelines. We don't just go on infinitely. So usually it's 5 to 10 business days, and then you proceed with your process. And if a parent doesn't want to participate in the meeting, that's certainly their right, but you can't just hold things indefinitely.
Okay, last one for me, and then it is going to Quinn. Does a private school legally have to follow a district's IEP? My concern is that all 3 of my children require speech therapy services, and the private school they attend has not hired a new speech therapist since the old one retired at the end of last school year. What can be done?
So nothing. That's one of the choices. Everything is a pro and a con, right? Whether you keep your kids at home and teach them online with the state, curriculum, send them to private schools. Private schools have no duty, onus, or responsibility to implement IDEA. Solely charter schools and public schools or psychiatric units or the criminal justice system are bound by implementing your IEP. So while private schools might receive funding from the government, they don't receive funding under Part B of IDEA.
All right. So my daughter has an IEP for reading. What would you suggest now that she's in high school?
What would I suggest?
For her reading support.
I would suggest the reading support that she needs to be successful, right? So in high school doesn't make it, evaporate. I find that when kids are in junior high or high school, parents really step back from advocating, and it gets even more wonky, which if you've had kids that were in junior high or high school, and if you've ever been that parent, while it feels like they need most of your attention when they're little, they need most of your attention when they're teenagers, right? So it depends on what reading intervention she has. Is she in resource? Is she in-class support? Is she in a dyslexia program? Is she in a co-taught class? I would keep that model unless you have data to support that the area of need in reading has been, recouped.
Okay, thank you. What rights do parents have when requesting for the district to pay for a hearing exam?
So this is a long answer. So if you need information that's medical and parents don't have a way to pay for that, let's say that a child is deaf and hard of hearing, has a vision impairment, or has a medical need, and let's say that we need to have a child evaluated for epilepsy, there is a provision, and I don't know what the laws are, that the school has to step in and help if that's needed as part of the evaluation process. But I don't know the specificity of it, but should that need arise, they do have to provide for that.
Okay. Explain the difference between resource and inclusion, or resource and gen ed.
So resource is a location where you receive special ed services, where it is only disabled peers. There are no non-disabled peers. It's under 300.115 in the federal code. Don't tell anybody I told you that. 300.115, supplementary aids and services. It's not gone away. You've all been lied to. Every one of you. Everyone. We got rid of that. We didn't. It's in the federal code. General ed is a setting with mostly non-disabled peers, a general ed teacher. And so those are the differences.
Okay. So this is Mark Jimenez, and he was on here. I remember him from last week, I think. It's a 2-part question, and I have to scroll a little bit to get the other part. So, hello. I asked last month about the district refusing an IE, and they said they would file a due process. They haven't yet. Should I email the district, or should I file a state complaint?
You should file a state complaint. All day long.
All day long. Whew.
All day long. And if you need help with your state complaint, call Quinn. She's a state complainer phenom.
I'm getting it. That's for sure. My son lays in the corner and does nothing at school all day, and they just let him do it. Not even a phone call home. what can I do about that?
So I would call an IEP meeting, and it appears that this campus is not able to provide my student an educational product. We'd like to look at out-of-district placement at the expense of the district. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for all the love. I appreciate it.
So our school said that our very first IEP meeting needed to be scheduled when they had time.
Oh, really? That's like it's Thanksgiving? I mean, when it's good for you, you just let us know. We'll lay down our lives for your schedule. No, the law says, that we meet at a mutually agreed upon time. Mutually means both of us, right? So when schools, I always say, please provide us 3 dates and times to choose from, and they always send me back 1 date. And obviously the word 3 threw them off. We can only meet at 10:47 on Tuesdays. That's when Miss Cindy has her planning period. I always say, well, I have brain surgery every Tuesday at 10:43, but let's look at other dates.
Yes. How do you obtain proof of an IEP implementation if the methods of evaluation weren't ever put on the IEP?
It's tough, right? So you gotta make the IEP right before you ask them to toe the line on it. I just got an IEP on a lovely cherub. I won't tell you where. He has 4 eligibilities, and his eligibility was just one thing: multiple disabilities. I'm sorry, what? Primary multiple disabilities, secondary, tertiary. He has a speech impairment. He has an OHI. He has a VI, and I can't. I mean, I can. So this is what I say to people. If your paperwork's not right, I don't expect for a teacher to implement it because your paperwork's junk. So if you were my client and you called me for a consult, the first thing I would tell you over the phone, and I've never been wrong, is your paperwork is a train wreck. And I say that to lovely people that I train that are school-based members. And have I ever been wrong?
Nope.
No. She said, nope.
Okay, so I got another one, and then I think we'll do some little rapid fire with all the emojis.
Okay.
Can a medical plan be added to the IEP when there is a medical disability or doctor's orders?
Right. So an IHP, an individualized healthcare plan, is when medicine is dispensed, the student has medical needs, and it needs to be attached to the IEP. And we keep getting this question in the feed. I work in every single state, just sitting here at my computer with my Ethernet cord, and so do all of our partners.
Okay, I'm kind of scrolling from the back the other way, so I missed it. All right, can the schools make parents of IEP students pay for any property damage due to behaviors?
That depends, right? It depends. Is that, did your student make a mural in the bathroom? I don't know. Did your student, break something and it was causation of a characteristic of his disability? It's a very broad question. I mean, if your student goes out and keys the principal's car, not that I'm making that a recommendation, but for instance, if your child had an iPad that they used a voice output communication device on, you're not responsible if that student with a disability drops it and the screen cracks.
Okay, do you have to have an IEP meeting when you want to add a service to an existing IEP?
You have to have an IEP meeting when you want to change eligibilities or minutes. And so if you're going to add a service, you're changing minutes. Most everything else can be done via a paper amendment.
Ooh, okay. You know what? There's a lot of these questions. Can schools decline administering ADOS if parents have done one already?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly don't want to deliver the same instrument as if it's already been used outside within an instructional year. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I need some emojis. Get your people to put some emojis in there, Karen.
Okay, you guys, emoji. There we go.
Okay. Can I fix my daughter's IEP if she's not improving?
So it's a duty, responsibility, an obligation under Andrew F. March 22nd, 2017, that if the student of record is not progressing, then the school-based members call an IEP meeting. But yes, absolutely, we can call an IEP meeting to look at progress and program.
someone call in to talk to you? That was a real question. I
Oh,
swear.
yeah, you can call in and talk to me.
They would email you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't just sit and chit chat with people on the phone all night, but yes, if you are wanting consideration for services, I represent families in due process hearings, state filings, federal filings, and obviously IEP and 504 meetings. So if that's something you're interested in, just send us an email at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. We have 6 full-time partners that can do almost all of those things as well.
Wait, can the school say that they don't recommend an accommodation of a parent when they request it? Wait, let me try that again. Can the school say they don't recommend an accommodation when a parent requests it?
Yeah, here's the deal. Disagreeing is part of the human experience. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. Thank you for what you guys just said. So we're going to disagree. It'd be really weird if you sat in a meeting and everything you said as the parent, the school went, that sounds fantastic. That's why it's a multidisciplinary team, because we all see the child through a different facet. So of course a school can disagree with implementation or adding an IEP accommodation.
Okay, it is time to talk about the Special Education Academy. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So tonight, everybody who's on here on this live, if you want to go to www.specialeducationacademy.com and click on the training tab, then you'll see 3 square pictures. The middle square is the academy. Click that and put in all of your information. Yes, even your credit card information. Then click the little blue words that say coupon code. And in all caps, type TikTok live. All one word, all caps. That is T for Timothy, I for Indigo, K for Karen, T for Tiffany, O for Outstanding, K for Karen, L for Levi, I for Indigo, V for Victory, E for Elephant. And that's all caps, TikTok live. And if you need a video step-by-step instruction, check out Karen's pinned video on her TikTok page.
Yes, that was so good. Bonnie, did you ever get that question from somebody? That they were wanting to ask a question?
I have not seen it pop up.
Okay. So if you guys have a question, you can email them in ahead of time, and then we'll get them for sure answered next week. That's advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. In the academy, I train, and then we open it up for questions. So somebody said start over, I'm late. So we would love to see you in the academy and train you guys to be the most successful IEP 504 implementer, creator, and deliverer. If you have questions about anything, just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. And remember, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys next week.